I think there are a number of reasons, both philosophically and theologically, that lead to the conclusion that God is a metaphysically necessary being. One would be the very concept of God is the concept of a greatest conceivable being. If there was anything that was greater than God, then that would be God. So by the very concept of God, God is the greatest conceivable being. Now, a greatest conceivable being would be a being which exists necessarily, not one which exists contingently. So the very concept of God, I think, entails that God is metaphysically necessary. In addition to that, several of the arguments for God's existence issue in the existence of such a metaphysically necessary being. For example, the argument from contingency says that anything that exists has an explanation of its existence. And that explanation will either be in an external cause, or else it will be in the necessity of the thing's own nature. Now, that implies that all contingent things will have causes of their existence. But God cannot have a cause of his existence, otherwise he wouldn't be God. That means that God exists by a necessity of his own nature, and that therefore God exists necessarily. Or again, the moral argument roots morality and moral values in God, but moral values, at least some of them, seem to exist necessarily. There's no possible world in which it is morally justified to torture little children because it's fun. There are moral truths that hold in every possible world. And if morality is grounded in God, that implies, therefore, that God exists in every possible world and is therefore a metaphysically necessary being. So for all of those philosophical reasons, I think we have good grounds for thinking that if there is a God, he must be metaphysically necessary in his being. Theologically speaking, I think this only makes good sense. God is a being which is worthy of worship, a most perfect being. And I think that a being that exists necessarily is more worthy of worship than one that just sort of happens to exist, that accidentally exists. So theologically, the concept of metaphysically necessary existence also seems to be a richer concept of God than the concept of a God who just happens to be there by accident.